How do people actually afford to have a kid? Anytime I've ever asked anyone, they always tell me you just figure it out. And let's be real, that's just not an actual answer. I think people say that just because they either forget or don't want to admit how hard it was and how much money they had to go into debt to have a kid, and then just call it normal. But here's what's actually normal. The average American family spends anywhere from 3 to 7 grand just to give birth, and that's with insurance. That's before onesies or car seats or the daycare that you should have gotten on the wait list 2 years ago. I don't have kids yet, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm making this video, because you'll find a way and it's worth it. Just doesn't really suffice when you're trying to give another human being the best life possible. So let's break down a few ways that people are actually able to afford modern day parenting. My name is Angelique, and I make practical life content for those struggling to survive the modern day. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm new to YouTube, so if you have any feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comments. But before we hop in, I'd like to give some historical and cultural context for any non Americans. The United States has been the leader in disposable income for several decades. But as our disposable income has gone up, our essentials have become paradoxically, well, less essential. And we are forced to be very strategic about how and when we take care of our necessities. And that's really the world that new parents are stepping into. More income, but less margin, and more options, but less accessible ones. So that's really the backdrop of what we're talking about today. So, how do people actually make it work? Let's start from the very beginning, because the real first financial shock that parents faced is before they've even left the hospital. Before insurance, the average delivery cost is about $16,000 in the United States, and that doesn't include a C section or a NICU stay. Here are a few tips to lower that check. First, always ask for an itemized bill. Hospitals make a lot more mistakes than you think, and they can and will lower bills when you can advocate for yourself. You can always ask for a patient advocate. Their job is to argue with billing and make sure that hospital staff are doing everything above board. Something to keep in mind, though, is that patient advocates are kind of like HR, and they ultimately work for the hospital. For truly independent help, check out the Patient Advocate Foundation. Second, I always opt for nonprofit hospitals whenever possible. Reason being, they are legally obligated to offer charity care, and most people just don't ask for it. Just call their billing department and specifically ask if they have any financial aid options. And here are a few more helpful resources. Medicaid. Many people qualify during pregnancy even when they didn't before. And in some states, they even cover rides to appointments for mom and baby. Federally qualified health centers. Free or sliding scale prenatal care, regardless of insurance. Pregnancy centers. I know that people feel a certain way about pregnancy centers, but you'd be amazed by all they can offer for parents and baby under 2. March of Dimes. Prenatal support and maternal health advocacy. But of course, once baby gets home, bills don't just magically stop. There are pediatrician visits and dental visits and sick care and vaccines, and it all just really adds up. One small tip I learned from my doctor recently is that many pediatricians have free samples of diapers and formulas and creams that you are welcome to just take if you ask. And we don't want to forget about mom's health, right? I mean, postpartum care is underfunded and underdiscussed, and yet the bulk of postpartum spending happens within the first 60 days of birth, often right after insurance drops off. For ongoing coverage, here are a few things to bookmark. CHIP, for families who earn too much on Medicaid but can't afford private insurance, covering kids up to 19. UnitedHealthcare Children's Foundation, grants for medical expenses not covered by insurance. St. Jude's. This is one of my favorites. Treatment is completely free, and they also frequently cover things like travel and housing and food, so families have the ability to focus on what matters most. Needy Meds. Free and low cost medications and clinics near you. If medical care felt like a gut punch, then childcare is where some parents really hit a wall. In some states, it's more than in state tuition, and where I live, it's even more than my rent. Unlike college tuition, there is no deferring it, there is no financial aid office. Someone is watching your kid while you have to go to work. The good news is you do have options if you know how to look for it. For example, on the government side, you have federal programs. CCDBG, Head Start, and free pre-K are all your main federally funded options. Start at childcare.gov to see exactly what your state has to offer. Also, a few tax breaks. Too worth knowing, the Child Independent Care Tax Credit lets you claim up to $3,000 per child at a tax time. And the Dependent Care FSA lets you set aside up to $7,500 pre-tax through your employer. Both are available regardless of income level. On the nonprofit side, there's also Childcare Aware of America. Put in your location at childcareaware.org, and it connects you with local scholarships, sliding scale providers, and more all in one place. And if all of that fails, you can always just ask your provider. Call and ask if they offer any scholarships, sliding scale rates, or sibling discounts. A lot of people don't ask, and many of these funds just sit there unused. So, just to summarize, even if you think you don't qualify, it's always a good idea to look and ask. Many cities and states offer free pre K. And of course, then there are nonprofits like Head Start or United Way that were specifically designed to help parents navigate this kind of situation. Even when they have a wait list, a lot of times they still have a coach to help parents find resources. So let's say you make too much money for any kind of assistance, but not enough money to actually pay for childcare. Well, then, welcome to what's called the benefits cliff. It is not a fun place to be where even a dollar raise can leave you worse off. It's to me one of the greatest failures of the American system, and it's really neither here nor there. I plan to do a deep dive on it in a future video, but for now, it's worth noting that childcare is really where it hits the hardest. So, what do families do in the missing middle? I mean, honestly, they're forced to get creative. Many parents are really forced to go back to more of a village way of raising kids where you have staggered schedules, you lean on family, or you have some kind of parent co op where you trade time rather than money. It's always worth looking into your local YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, or any faith based organization. They're often overlooked and frequently labeled just for poor people, when in reality, the quality of care is just as good as any other daycare. A few other options worth looking into are sliding scale providers. Some daycares adjust rates based on your income. Just ask. Facebook childcare groups. I have a friend who found her entire childcare arrangement through a local Facebook group. It sounds informal, but these communities are very real and resourceful. Au pairs. If you have a spare bedroom, hosting an au pair can be cheaper than full time daycare. College campus daycares. This one's a hidden gem that my mom told me about. My mom discovered that her college's child development program had an on site daycare at a dramatically discounted rate, and you only needed to be enrolled in one class to access it. Community college are especially worth a call. So far, we've only really discussed the infant and baby stage, and with good reason, because that's really the most expensive part of raising a kid up until they go to college. But as they grow older, you still need to keep them fed, clothed, engaged, and educated. Food and clothes are obviously the most basic needs, but thankfully, that's also where the best resources exist. I think people without kids forget how much a kid can really eat and how expensive that actually is. I mean, watching my nieces and nephews grow, I am amazed by how much they can actually consume. Most people have heard about SNAP, but a lesser known one is WIC, which covers pregnant women and children under 5. Both are worth looking into, even if you don't think you qualify. A much lesser known program are Sunbucks or Summer EBT, which covers up to $120 in grocery costs for kids in the summer months when they may lose out on school lunches. And on that note, a lot of schools also offer free lunches in the summer, so it's always worth Googling or asking your school district if that's something that they have. For clothing, kids obviously grow fast and the cost is relentless. So a lot of schools, churches, and community organizations will have what they call clothing closets, which are free clothes to help offset that cost. If you want more information, you should call your school counselor or call some nonprofits like United Way or Salvation Army. So here's a short list of a few of my favorite resources for food and clothing. SNAP and WIC, your two biggest federal food assistance programs. SNAP covers general groceries. WIC covers nutritious food specifically for pregnant women and children up to 5. Some Bucks or Summer EBT, a newer federal program that gives eligible families $120 per child for groceries in the summer months. A lot of families don't know this exists yet. Feeding America. Put in your zip code at feedingamerica.org and it finds you the nearest food bank instantly. Clothing Across America provides brand new clothing and personal care items for families in need through local shelters and clothing banks. Public school is technically free, but as many parents will tell you, it's not actually free. When you take into account school supplies or tutoring or field trips, extracurricular sporting fees, it all really adds up. An underrated resource available to families are public libraries. My library has grants for field trips or extracurriculars, but they also have things like museum passes or free classes and after school activities and so many more resources. I think people don't realize that libraries today are just not about books anymore. If you're looking for another extracurricular or an after school program, you can also check out the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club that have sliding scale and low cost options. So, for education and enrichment, here's a short list of resources to keep in mind. Your local public library, free and massively underused. Beyond books, modern libraries offer tutoring, museum passes, STEM kits, Wi Fi hotspots, and so much more. Anyone who follows me on TikTok knows exactly how much I love the library. YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. Affordable after school programs and activities with sliding scale fees. Reading is fundamental. One of the oldest children literacy nonprofits in the country, providing free books and reading resources to qualifying schools and communities. Donors choose. Teachers post classroom needs, donors fund them. If your child's school is underfunded, share this with the teacher. Khan Academy. I have used Khan Academy as an adult. Free world class K through 12 academics, math, science, test prep, and so much more, all for free. First stop if tutoring costs are a concern. Look, raising kids in the United States is very expensive, and we've covered a lot of ground today. I do hope that at least some of it was helpful, but before we sign off, I do want to leave you with some final thoughts. A lot of my feed lately on social media has been of older people saying that younger folks aren't having kids because we're weak or we don't want to put in the hard work. And that's just not the truth. In reality, when people say you just figure it out, they're not lying, but they aren't really telling the full truth either. Because the full truth is complicated and expensive and exhausting to navigate. But for modern day parenting, resources do exist and help exists. And the more we talk about it, the less alone new parents feel. And that's ultimately why I made this video, so that parents of today's day and age can find resources more easily. Every resource is linked in the description below. If you found this helpful, don't forget to share with someone who needs it. If you didn't, please leave your feedback in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.